It's a staple in the shonen genre that whenever characters are about to use a powerful ability or do something cool, you are going to hear the name of that ability out loud while the character is executing it. It makes for very hype scenes both in the anime and in the manga, and Naruto is no different. Almost every time a character uses a jutsu, you hear the name of the jutsu being said out loud. Sometimes, however, there's nothing said and still the jutsu activates. Which begs the question, do Naruto characters have to yell out their jutsus in order to perform them, or is it something they just do whenever they feel like it? What's actually going on behind this thing? The first thing we have to get out of the way is that from a more technical and logical standpoint, yelling out the name of your jutsu just before you use it isn't exactly the most intelligent thing in the world, because you're essentially telling your opponent what you're about to do. Now, if you don't have to yell out the jutsu and perform it nonetheless, you can use that to your advantage and say the name of another jutsu and deceive your opponent so that he thinks you're doing something else, but we never ever see characters doing that. And even if they did, it probably wouldn't be the most effective thing in the world. But just think about this for a second. If they are yelling the jutsus that they're about to do to their opponents, it's essentially the same thing as an MMA fighter that's, fighting in the octagon, and he says, "Roundhouse kick!" as he's about to perform a roundhouse kick. It's not the most effective strategy in the world. It will give your opponent time and the knowledge to counter your ability, and even if your opponent doesn't know and has never seen the jutsu you're yelling out, there's also a chance that the name of the jutsu will give away what you're about to do. For instance, imagine Shikamaru saying, "Shadow Possession Jutsu." What's Shikamaru going to do as soon as you hear that? A, is he gonna shove you with a Rasengan? Or B, is he going to use his shadow to possess you? I don't know, man. And because shinobi battles rely so much on subterfuge, this is the entire premise of a ninja. They have to read in between the lines and come up with strategies to counter their opponents. It's not the best thing in the world when you're yelling out your jutsus in the middle of a fight. Imagine just before you shoot a penalty, you tell the goalkeeper which side of the goal you're gonna aim for. It's not a best practice in the world, but you still have the problem that it's much cooler when you hear or read the name of the jutsu while the character is performing said jutsu. And you could just apply the rule of cool here and say, yeah, characters will yell out the jutsu name because it looks good in page or during the scene, but then, well, it kind of breaks the entire premise of the universe, right? Some other series will circumvent that rule, saying that, well, you actually need to say the words out loud in order for your ability to work. This is mostly done in series that involve magic and spells, where they have to cast spells by saying the name of the spells. And then you can also impose other conditions for the activation of an ability, like somatic components, like hand signs, for example. This is very much something the characters in Naruto have to do in order to perform jutsus. For the most part, we know hand signs die down after a while in the Naruto series, and I've made an entire video about that. However, hand signs are a completely different story, because there's actually lore and in-universe explanations as to how they work. You have to weave them in order to mold your chakra and perform jutsus. Characters explain that to Naruto and to other characters as well, and we, the audience, understand, okay, hand signs are very important in this universe. There's even a data book status for them, which means they're completely integral for the battles in the series. But nobody ever says that you have to say the name of the jutsu out loud in order to perform them, or even to make the jutsu easier. Nobody ever states that. And you would figure that if this was an important thing in the Naruto universe, it would have been explained to Naruto himself and therefore to the audience, but we never get this explanation, meaning that it's not that important, is it? So why do Naruto characters yell out their jutsus? Why would they have to do that? Is it just because it's the rule of cool and you have to say the name of the jutsu because it just looks good? Well, no. And the reason why this is not the case is because the characters in the Naruto series do not yell out their jutsus when they are performing them. At least in 95 to 99% of cases, because it didn't go through every single jutsu in the series in order to make this video. It would be too much work. Now, you may say this statement is a lie and that I'm just full of it, but hold hold on a second here. The first thing you have to understand in order to grasp this aspect of the Naruto universe is that Naruto and manga/anime in general is a medium that uses a lot of inner monologues and several different point of view characters at the same time. It's not like a book where usually you'll have just one character be the point of view character for that given chapter. Some books only have one point of view character, period, but manga/anime is different. It's not unusual for you to jump from head to head, seeing the thoughts and feelings of several different characters in the same scene, which is something definitely not recommended for a book because things can be very messy and you can lose yourself or even get tired of jumping from head to head. But in the manga, for instance, you can actually follow things much easier because you see the face of the character that's thinking that and you immediately associate it with him. Also, inner monologues is not something you're gonna see a lot in Western movies and TV shows, but you'll see a lot of it in manga and anime. It's simply because of the different natures of the stories and also how they deliver exposition and how the dialogue in the story is structured. Usually characters are speaking, but they're also thinking. And sometimes they're just thinking and therefore their thoughts explain the situation to the audience. Another shonen trope is that when two or more characters are fighting, there are also going to be characters watching the fight. This is extremely common and it's a way to deliver exposition while you're still doing some character development to the characters watching the fight itself. This is most apparent in the Chunin exams for the Naruto story, where people are literally watching the fight in a stadium, but it also happens in several other situations. For instance, in the Itachi versus Sasuke fight, Zetsu is watching the fight play out and therefore commenting on the fight with himself, with his other counterpart, and delivering information to the audience. But coming back to the Chunin exams, I would like to talk about a particular jutsu there, where Sasuke didn't actually say the name out loud, but they used another technique to deliver the name of the jutsu while Sasuke was using it. It was a very iconic fight and a very iconic first time usage of the jutsu, the Chidori. When Gaara encases himself in the ball of sand, Sasuke uses that time to prepare his new jutsu. The jutsu has been training for a month now, and the reason why he got to the Chunin exams late. And the entire chapter revolves around Sasuke preparing for the Chidori, for him to use the jutsu for the first time and the audience reacting to what he is doing, hyping the jutsu up. And the exposition is being delivered by the people watching it, especially Kakashi and Guy. They're talking to the other Genins about the jutsu strengths and how the jutsu works. Sasuke himself barely says or thinks anything during the chapter where he uses the jutsu and where he technically is the main character. But the most important thing that happens is when Sasuke lands the jutsu on Gaara. We do hear/read the jutsu's name, Chidori, but it's not Sasuke saying or even thinking the name, it's Guy. While he delivers the explanation and Sasuke is executing the Chidori, when he hits Gaara with it, Guy says, Chidori, the technique of 1,000 birds, finishing his sentence there, and this delivers the name of the jutsu. Now, this is just one of the ways as to how the Naruto story circumvents the issue of having to say the name of the jutsu out loud whenever the jutsu is being used, because it's a staple and it looks good. Other characters may say the name of the jutsu instead of the actual character using it. Another time where this happens is in the Sasuke versus Danzo fight. Sasuke's killing Danzo time and time again, and nothing is really working, he's just coming back. And at first, Sasuke himself and the audience don't understand what the hell is going on. But then, Tobito, who's watching the fight, again, the watching trope, he thinks and says, wait a minute, he's using Hashirama cells, he has all those Sharingan? I would have never imagined I would see this jutsu here. And then, Sasuke's arrow hits Danzo. Danzo disappears, triggering the jutsu. And then, Tobito says, Izanagi, explaining the jutsu afterwards, but it's one of those instances where another character says the name of the jutsu out loud instead of the character himself. And you can see that in those situations, the character using the jutsu, he doesn't yell the word out loud. Actually, he stays pretty silent. But then you may say, well, most of the time, it's the character, him or herself, that says the name of the jutsu when the jutsu is being used. And I say, yes, this is true, but I was pointing out two interesting ways to circumvent this thing, of of having to say the name out loud, even though it doesn't make sense for you to be yelling the jutsu to your opponent. But usually what happens is that the characters, they do not say the name of their jutsu. They just think it. And because inner monologues is something that we are expecting from manga and anime, and also we are accepting that there are going to be several different point of view characters at one particular chapter, characters will think the name of their jutsus when they are executing it. Because yes, saying the name of the jutsu out loud is important, first for the audience to know what the hell character is doing, but second because it's also cool. Then again, there are gonna be several different moments where the character should be saying something else as they are executing the jutsu for story reasons, to make the story better. Just coming up with one random example from Naruto, when Naruto hits Jubito from behind as soon as he realizes, well, I can use Sage Mode to hit him with a Rasengan. Tobirama teleports him to Jubito's location with a flying thunder god, but instead of Naruto just yelling Rasengan or even thinking Rasengan and just that, he instead says, don't you dare say a word about my father who was the Hokage. It was a much more impactful line than just him yelling the jutsu's name. And this happens time and time again in the story. And then you may say, well, but still, characters yell the name of the jutsu. They say the name sometimes. They are not saying other stuff when they execute the attack or whatever. And I say, actually, no. Usually, characters do not open their mouths and say anything while they're executing their jutsus. They only think. Now, this may be a misconception because people are mostly used to the anime, which is the more famous type of Naruto media, which is fine, but this can actually make people think the characters are saying the names of the jutsus out loud when they're actually not. Maybe because they cannot see the mouths of the characters when they are performing the jutsu, or because the characters are too far away, or because they just don't really pay attention when the jutsu is being used. They're much more focused in the story than in seeing whether or not the character is yelling the name of the jutsu or not. But this is much easier to see in the manga, because in the manga, there are speech bubbles when characters speak, and usually when characters are thinking, we only see the words juxtaposed over the panels of the manga. Most of the times when jutsus are used, this is the method of delivery of the name of the jutsu, essentially. We just see the words written as though characters are thinking them, and sometimes we don't even get that. For example, most of the time when characters using the Flying Thunder Goddess spamming the jutsu or whatever, we do not see the name Hiraishin every single time they use the jutsu. Instead, we only see it when it's a much more impactful scene, such as when Minato hits Obito or when Tobirama kills Izuna with the Hiraishin Giri. But you can see that most of the time, whenever a jutsu is used in the manga, there are no speech bubbles for the jutsu's name. Unless another character, like I described before, says the name of the jutsu for the character that used the jutsu in any given circumstance, or if after the jutsu is used, and this is another very common trope in shonen anime, the character says, ah, I see, you used the fireball jutsu, for example, a jutsu that is known for yada yada yada, and they say the jutsu after it's used, acknowledging that the jutsu that was used against them was some type of jutsu that they know of, that they heard of, or that they're just seeing for the first time. But the character that uses the jutsu himself will almost never say the name of the jutsu out loud. Even in the moments that you're probably pretty sure characters are yelling the jutsu's name, for example, whenever Sasuke and Naruto clash their Chidori and Rasengan, they are not yelling Chidori! Rasengan! No, they're just thinking. There are no speech bubbles with Chidori or Rasengan during those pages, and there are several Chidori Rasengan clashes throughout the series. Another time you may be thinking characters are yelling out loud is when they open the gates, Rock Lee and Guy. No, they do not yell the name of the gates. They think about it, and the scene is intense, but they're not speaking. Even the first time Naruto uses the Rasengan on Kabuto, for example, a scene where people just assume Naruto is screaming, Rasengan! He is not yelling Rasengan, and Naruto's the guy that yells a lot. He's not saying anything there. He is thinking Rasengan. It's a hype scene, and in the anime, we hear his thoughts, and therefore, because we kind of don't see his mouth as he hits Kabuto, we just assume he's yelling it. But no, he is not. He is not saying a word whenever he hits Kabuto for the first time, and the same thing applies whenever Naruto uses the Rasen Shuriken for the first time in the fight against Kakuzu. Whenever he forms the Rasen Shuriken and we get had that nice scene of him standing with a shuriken spinning above him for the first time, we hear in the anime, wind style, Rasen shuriken, but he is not saying anything. In the manga we see there's no speech bubble for the Rasen shuriken name. When you talk about Mangekyo Sharingan abilities, for example, the Susanoo, people usually don't scream Susanoo whenever they use it. Usually they don't even say the name Susanoo, it's just kind of something that happens. But Amaterasu, for example, when Itachi uses it for the first time against Sasuke, or even Flame Control when Sasuke is spamming that in the 5 Summit, they are not saying the name of the jutsus out loud, they're just thinking. Also, Kamui is the very same thing with Kakashi and Obito. Obito barely even thinks Kamui at all because it would have been a spoiler if we knew that Tobi was using the same jutsu as Kakashi. And then there are also other ways to deliver the name of the jutsu. For example, when Sasuke uses Kirin, he says, "This jutsu's name is Kirin. Be gone," with a thunderclap. And then he uses Kirin, but he doesn't have to yell, "Kirin!" as Kirin is landing on Itachi, for instance. Now, maybe thinking the jutsu or even saying the name of the jutsu would help you concentrate in doing the jutsu, but this is never really implied, so much so that during many times of the series, we don't even have this inner monologue of the character thinking the name of the jutsu or even saying it. And then, of course, there are exceptions to this rule where characters yell out the name of the jutsu as they are performing it, but they are actually very few and far between if you compare to every other usage of jutsus, where this doesn't happen. So no, characters don't have to say the name of their jutsus out loud, and they mostly don't. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, it really helps me out, and also like the video to boost me with the YouTube algorithm. Watch this other video right here for more Naruto content just like this, and thank you so much for watching.